Jake Morrison revved his motorcycle engine one more time before turning it off. The black Harley-Davidson made a loud noise that echoed through the quiet street. He liked that sound. It made people look at him. It made them move out of his way. That was exactly how Jake wanted things. He pulled off his leather gloves and stuffed them into his jacket pocket. The morning sun was already getting hot and the leather was making him sweat. But Jake never took off his jacket. The black leather with metal studs made him look tough. More importantly, it made him feel powerful. Jake walked toward the small coffee shop on the corner of 5th Street. He had been coming here for weeks, not because he liked the coffee, but because he enjoyed making the workers nervous. The young girl behind the counter always looked scared when he walked in. Her hands would shake when she made his order. Jake found that amusing. The bell above the door made a soft sound as Jake pushed it open. The coffee shop smelled like fresh bread and roasted beans. There were only 3 other customers inside. An old man reading a newspaper sat by the window. A woman with a baby was ordering at the counter. And in the far corner, a man in simple clothes sat quietly with his laptop. Jake looked at the man in the corner for a moment. He was probably in his 50s, with dark hair and a calm face. He wore a plain black t-shirt and jeans. Nothing special about him at all. Jake dismissed him immediately and walked to the counter. The young girl behind the counter saw Jake coming. Her name tag said Amy. Jake had never bothered to remember her real name, but he had noticed how she always looked. Down when he talked to her. "Large black coffee," Jake said in a rough voice. He did not say please. He never said please. Amy nodded quickly and turned to make his coffee. Her hands were shaking again. Jake smiled. He liked having this effect on people. While he waited, Jake looked around the coffee shop again. Everything seemed so peaceful and quiet, too peaceful for his taste. Jake preferred places with more excitement, more chaos, more fear. Amy handed him the coffee cup with both hands, trying not to spill it. "That will be $3.50, she said in a small voice. Jake took his time getting the money from his wallet. He liked making her wait. Finally, he put $4 on the counter and walked away without waiting for his change. He knew Amy would keep the 50 cents, but he also knew she would feel guilty about it. That made him happy. Jake sat down at a table near the window and drank his coffee slowly. It was too hot and tasted bitter, but he did not care. He was not really here for the coffee anyway. He was here because he enjoyed being somewhere he did not belong. He enjoyed making people uncomfortable just by being there. Outside the window, Jake watched people walk by on the sidewalk. Office workers hurrying to their jobs, students carrying backpacks, parents pushing baby strollers. All of them looked so busy and important. Jake thought they were all weak and foolish. After finishing half his coffee, Jake stood up and walked outside. The morning air felt good after the stuffy coffee shop. He was about to get on his motorcycle when he saw something that caught his attention. A golden retriever was walking slowly along the sidewalk. The dog looked friendly and well cared for. Its fur was clean and shiny. It wore a blue collar with what looked like expensive tags. The dog was not on a leash, but it walked calmly as if it knew exactly where it was going. Jake looked around to see if anyone was watching the dog. The sidewalk was mostly empty. The dog's owner was probably inside one of the nearby shops. This gave Jake an idea, a cruel idea that made him smile. Jake had always enjoyed hurting things that could not fight back. When he was younger, it had been smaller kids at school. As he got older, it became anyone he thought was weaker than him. Animals were even better targets because they could not tell anyone what he had done. The golden retriever stopped walking and looked up at Jake. The dog's tail wagged once as if it was trying to be friendly. This made Jake even more angry. He hated it when his victims were not afraid of him. "Stupid dog," Jake said under his breath. He looked around one more time to make sure no one was watching. The street was quiet, perfect. Jake walked up to the golden retriever slowly. The dog did not run away. Instead, it sat down and tilted its head, as if it was curious about what Jake wanted. The innocent look in the dog's eyes made Jake even more determined to hurt it. Without any warning, Jake drew back his heavy boot and kicked the dog hard in its side. The golden retriever let out a sharp cry of pain and fell over. It tried to get up but stumbled, clearly hurt. Jake laughed. The sound was ugly and mean. He felt a rush of excitement from causing pain to something innocent. This was exactly the kind of thing that made him feel powerful. The injured dog tried to walk away, but it was limping badly. It made small, whimpering sounds with each step. Jake watched for a moment, enjoying the sight of the animal's suffering. Then Jake heard something that made his blood run cold. From behind him came a voice that was quiet but somehow more frightening than any shout. "Buddy." Jake turned around, quickly. The man from the coffee shop was standing there. The quiet man in the plain clothes who had seemed so ordinary and forgettable. But now there was something different about him. His face was still calm, but his eyes were not. His eyes looked like winter. The man walked past Jake without even looking at him. He knelt down next to the injured dog and gently put his hands on the animal's fur. "It's okay, buddy," he said softly. "I'm here now." The dog looked up at the man and its tail wagged weakly. Even in pain, the animal seemed to feel safe now that its owner was there. Jake suddenly realized what had happened. This was not just some random dog. This was someone's beloved pet, and that someone had seen everything. For the first time in years, Jake felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. Not the quick fear of getting caught doing something wrong, but deep fear. The kind that made his stomach feel sick and his hands start to shake. The man stood up slowly and looked directly at Jake. He did not say anything. He did not need to. His eyes said everything. Jake quickly walked to his motorcycle and started the engine. He needed to get away from here. Fast. As he drove away, he could see the man in his mirror, still watching him, still holding his injured dog. Jake told himself he was being silly. What could one ordinary man do to him? But deep inside, he knew something had changed. Something important had just happened, and there would be consequences. He just had no idea how big those consequences would be. Kevin Matthews sat in the waiting room of the animal hospital. His hands were gentle as he petted Buddy, who was lying quietly on the bench beside him. The dog's breathing was still shallow, and Kevin could see the pain in his friend's eyes. The veterinarian had said Buddy would be okay, but he needed rest and medicine for his bruised ribs. Kevin did not look angry. People who knew him well would recognize the dangerous calm that had settled over his face. It was the same look he got when he was preparing for a difficult movie role. Focused, determined, patient. "Mr. Matthews?" The young veterinarian came out of the examination room. "Buddy is going to be fine. He has some bruising on his ribs, but nothing is broken. I want to keep him here for a few hours to make sure there are no internal injuries." Kevin nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Green. Please give him whatever he needs. Money is not a problem." After the doctor left, Kevin took out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. The phone rang twice before someone answered. Marcus speaking. "Marcus, it's Kevin. I need a favor." Marcus Chen had been Kevin's friend for over 20 years. He worked as a private investigator, and Kevin had helped him through some difficult times. Marcus never forgot a kindness. "Anything you need, Kevin, what's going on?" Kevin told Marcus about what had happened to Buddy. He described the man who had hurt his dog, the black motorcycle, the leather jacket with metal studs, the cruel laugh. "I want to know who he is," Kevin said quietly. "I want to know everything about him." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He had heard that tone in Kevin's voice before. "Kevin, maybe you should just call the police. Let them handle this. The police will give him a fine for animal cruelty. Maybe a few days in jail. That's not enough. What are you planning to do?" Kevin looked at Buddy, who was sleeping peacefully now. "I'm going to teach him about consequences." 3 hours later, Marcus called Kevin back. "I found him. His name is Jake Morrison, 28 years old. He lives in an apartment on Sunset Boulevard. And Kevin, this guy is bad news. He has a record: assault, theft, harassment. He's part of a motorcycle gang called the Iron Wolves. Kevin, Wrote down the address. Well, what else? The Iron Wolves are small but nasty. They run protection rackets on some of the local businesses. You know, the old pay us or bad things happen routine. Jake seems to be one of their enforcers, the guy who does the dirty work. Send me everything you have on him and his gang. Kevin, be careful, these people are dangerous. So am I. Kevin hung up the phone and looked at Buddy again. The dog was awake now, looking much better. When he saw Kevin watching him, his tail wagged weakly. Don't worry, boy, Kevin said softly. He's going to pay for what he did to you. That evening, Kevin sat in his home office reading through the files Marcus had sent him. Jake Morrison had been in trouble since he was a teenager, fighting in school, stealing cars, hurting people who could not fight back. The pattern was clear and ugly. The Iron Wolves gang was worse than Kevin had expected. They had been terrorizing local businesses for months. Restaurant owners who refused to pay them found their windows broken. Shop owners who complained to police had their stores vandalized. The gang was careful never to hurt anyone badly enough to bring serious police attention, but they made life miserable for dozens of honest people. Kevin made a list of all the businesses that had been hurt by Jake and his gang. Then he started making phone calls. The first call was to Tony Russo, who owned a small Italian restaurant that had been targeted by the Iron Wolves. Kevin had eaten there many times and always enjoyed Tony's cooking. Kevin, how are you, my friend? Tony sounded happy but tired. I'm doing well, Tony, but I heard you've been having some trouble lately. There was a long pause. It's nothing I can't handle. Tony, I know about the Iron Wolves. I know they've been bothering you. Another pause, longer this time. Kevin, these are dangerous people. It's better if you don't get involved. What if I told you there was a way to stop them? A way to make sure they never bother you or anyone else again? I would say that sounds too good to be true. Kevin smiled. Trust me, Tony. I have a plan. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to write down everything they did to you. Every threat, every broken window, every dollar they took. Can you do that? You really think you can stop them? I know I can. Kevin made similar calls to 6 other business owners. By the end of the night, he had promises from all of them to document everything the Iron Wolves had done. More importantly, he had their trust. The next morning, Kevin visited his lawyer, Patricia Wong. She had been handling Kevin's legal affairs for years and was one of the smartest people he knew. Patricia, I need to set up a fund, something to help local businesses that have been hurt by crime. Patricia raised an eyebrow. This is rather sudden. What's brought this on? Kevin told her about Buddy and about what he had learned about Jake. Morrison and the Iron Wolves. Patricia listened without interrupting. So you want to help these business owners fight back legally? I want to give them the resources they need to stand up to bullies, good lawyers, security systems, whatever it takes. Kevin, this could get expensive. I don't care about the money. I care about stopping people who hurt others for fun. Patricia nodded. I'll set up the fund. But Kevin, be careful. If this Jake Morrison is as dangerous as you say, he might not just accept defeat. Let me worry about Jake Morrison. That afternoon, Kevin drove to Jake's neighborhood. He did not go to Jake's apartment building. Instead, he parked across the street and watched. He wanted to understand Jake's routine, where he went, who he talked to, what made him feel safe. Kevin had learned patience from years of movie work. Sometimes you had to wait hours for the perfect shot. Sometimes you had to do the same scene 20 times until it was right. Patience was a skill, and Kevin was very good at it. He watched Jake leave his apartment building at 2 o'clock. Jake got on his motorcycle and drove to a bar called Murphy's. Kevin followed at a distance, careful to stay out of sight. At Murphy's, Jake met with 5 other men. They all wore leather jackets and had the same hard look in their eyes. These were the Iron Wolves. Kevin watched them through the bar's window as they drank beer and talked loudly. After an hour, the group split up. 3 of them got on motorcycles and drove away together. Jake and 1 other man stayed at the bar. Kevin waited. He was good at waiting. At 4 o'clock, Jake came out of the bar alone. He was walking unsteadily, clearly drunk. He got on his motorcycle, anyway, and drove off. Kevin followed him again. This time, Jake went to a small grocery store. Kevin watched from his car as Jake went inside. Through the store's window, Kevin could see Jake talking to an older man behind the counter. The conversation looked tense. When Jake came out of the store, he was smiling, his cruel smile. The older man looked frightened and angry. Kevin made a note of the store's name. Then he followed Jake back to his apartment building. That evening, Kevin visited the grocery store. The older man behind the counter was named Sam Park. He looked tired and worried. "Excuse me," Kevin said politely. "I'm Kevin Matthews. I think we need to talk." Sam looked confused. "About what?" "About Jake Morrison and the Iron Wolves. About what they've been doing to you in your store." Sam's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." Kevin pulled out a business card and handed it to Sam. "My phone number is on there. When you're ready to talk, call me. I can help you stop them." "Nobody can stop them." Kevin looked directly into Sam's eyes. "I can." As Kevin left the store, he felt a familiar feeling. It was the same feeling he got when he was preparing for a challenging role. Everything was coming together. The research was done. The preparation was complete. Now it was time for the real work to begin. 2 weeks after Buddy was hurt, Jake Morrison's world started falling apart. It began with small things that he did not notice at first. His favorite bar, Murphy's, suddenly had new security cameras everywhere. The bartender who used to let Jake drink for free sometimes now asked for payment up front. The other customers seemed less friendly. Some of them even moved to different tables when Jake sat down. Jake thought it was just bad luck. He had no idea that Kevin Matthews had quietly bought Murphy's building and was now the landlord. The new security cameras were recording everything Jake and his gang said and did. The first real sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning. Jake was sleeping late in his apartment when someone started pounding on his door. He stumbled out of bed, angry at being woken up. "Police, open up!" Jake's heart started beating fast. He looked through the peephole and saw 2 police officers in the hallway. Behind them stood Detective Maria Santos, who had been trying to catch the Iron Wolves for months. Jake opened the door slowly. "What do you want?" Detective Santos held up a piece of paper. "We have a search warrant, Mr. Morrison. We're looking for evidence related to the theft of motorcycles." "I don't know anything about stolen motorcycles." "Then you won't mind if we look around." The police spent 2 hours searching Jake's apartment. They found exactly what they were looking for. Hidden in Jake's closet was a bag full of motorcycle parts. Each part had serial numbers that matched bikes reported stolen in the past month. Jake tried to explain that the parts belonged to a friend, but Detective Santos was not interested in his excuses. "Jake Morrison, you're under arrest for receiving stolen property." As they put handcuffs on Jake, Detective Santos smiled. "Funny thing about these parts, Jake. Someone called in an anonymous tip about where to find them. Someone who knew exactly where you kept them." Jake was released on bail the next day, but his troubles were just beginning. When he got back to his apartment, his landlord was waiting for him. "Morrison, you're out," the landlord said. "I want you gone by the end of the week." "You can't kick me out. I pay my rent." The landlord held up a piece of paper. "Says here you violated your lease agreement. No illegal activities on the property. Having stolen goods in your apartment counts as illegal activity." Jake looked at the paper. It was from a law firm he had never heard of. The lawyers had big offices downtown and charged more money per hour than Jake made in a month. "Who's paying for these lawyers?" Jake asked. The landlord shrugged. "All I know is they offered to handle the eviction for free. Said it was part of some community service program." While Jake was dealing with his eviction, the other members of the Iron Wolves were having their own problems. Danny Rodriguez, the gang's leader, got pulled over for speeding and ended up arrested when the police found drugs in his car. He swore the drugs were not his, but the police did not believe him. Steve Wilson, another gang member, discovered that his unemployment benefits had been cut off. The government said he had been working under the table at a garage that fixed stolen cars. Steve had been working there, but he thought no one knew about it. Paul Mitchell found out that the IRS was investigating him for not paying taxes on money he made from illegal activities. Somehow they had detailed records of every payment he had received from businesses that paid protection money. One by one, the Iron Wolves were getting arrested, investigated, or forced to leave town. Jake started to realize that this was not just bad luck. Someone was doing this to them on purpose. The businesses that used to pay protection money to the Iron Wolves were suddenly not afraid anymore. Tony Russo hired a security company to watch his restaurant at night. Sam Park installed new locks and cameras at his grocery store. Other shop owners started working together, sharing information about threats and supporting each other. All of these business owners had received help from the same source. A fund called the Community Safety Initiative had paid for their security systems, their lawyers, and their new equipment. When Jake tried to find out who was behind the fund, he hit a wall. The lawyers would not tell him anything. Jake's bail hearing for the stolen motorcycle parts did not go well. The prosecutor had more evidence than Jake expected. They had photos of Jake with known criminals. They had recordings of conversations where Jake talked about illegal activities. They had witnesses who were willing to testify against him. Jake's public defender looked overwhelmed. "They have a really strong case against you, Jake. The evidence is very detailed. Someone spent a lot of time putting this together. What kind of sentence am I looking at? If they can prove you were part of an organized crime ring, you could get 10 years, maybe more." Jake felt sick. 10 years in prison would destroy his life. He tried to think of who could have gathered all this evidence against him. The police were not smart enough to do this kind of investigation. This was something else. Someone with money and patience and connections. The final blow came when Jake tried to get help from his gang. He called Danny Rodriguez, but Danny's phone was disconnected. He went to Steve Wilson's apartment, but Steve had moved out. Paul Mitchell was in jail waiting for his own trial. The Iron Wolves were finished. Jake was on his own. That night, Jake sat in a cheap motel room trying to figure out what to do next. He had been kicked out of his apartment. His gang was gone. He was facing serious jail time. His motorcycle had been impounded as evidence. He had no money and no friends. Someone knocked on his motel room door. Jake looked through the peephole but could not see anyone. He opened the door carefully. There was no one there, but on the ground was a manila envelope with his name on it. Inside the envelope were photographs. Photos of Jake kicking the golden retriever. Photos of Jake threatening business owners. Photos of Jake with stolen merchandise. There were also copies of legal documents, police reports, and bank records. At the bottom of the envelope was a single piece of paper with a typed message. "Mr. Morrison, you hurt something innocent for your own amusement. Now you understand what it feels like to be helpless. This is only the beginning. You have a choice to make. Call the number below if you want to discuss your options. If you choose to run or hide, these documents will be sent to every police department in the country. You cannot escape the consequences of your actions." Below the message was a phone number. Jake stared at the paper for a long time. His hands were shaking. Whoever was doing this to him had resources he could not fight. They had connections he could not match. They had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. For the first time in his adult life, Jake Morrison felt truly afraid. Not the quick fear of getting caught doing something wrong, but deep, permanent fear. The kind of fear that comes from knowing you are completely powerless. Jake had spent his whole life making other people feel this way. Now he finally understood what it was like to be the victim instead of the predator. He picked up his phone and dialed the number. It rang once. Before someone answered, "Hello, Jake." The voice was calm and quiet. "I think it's time we met." Jake Morrison stood outside the small diner on Maple Street at exactly 8 o'clock. His legs felt weak and his mouth was dry. He had never been this scared in his life. The phone call had been short and simple. The calm voice had told him where to go and when to be there. Nothing else. Jake pushed open the diner's glass door. A bell rang softly above his head. The place was almost empty. An old woman sat at the counter drinking coffee. A tired-looking waitress was wiping down tables. And in a booth at the back sat the man from the coffee shop, the man who owned the dog Jake had kicked. Jake's heart started pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Everything suddenly made sense. The systematic destruction of his life. The evidence that appeared from nowhere, the lawyers and private investigators and security cameras, all of it had come from this quiet man in simple clothes. But Jake still did not know who the man really was. He looked ordinary, like a teacher or an office worker, someone you would never notice in a crowd. How could someone like this have so much power? The man looked up as Jake approached the booth. His face showed no emotion at all. "Sit down, Jake." Jake slid into the seat across from him. His hands were shaking, so he kept them under the table. "Who are you?" "My name is Kevin Matthews." The name meant nothing to Jake. He had been expecting someone famous or powerful, a politician maybe, or a crime boss, not just some guy with an ordinary name. "I've never heard of you," Jake said. Kevin smiled slightly. "That's part of the problem, isn't it? You hurt my dog without knowing anything about me. You made an enemy without even realizing it. Look, I'm sorry about your dog. I was having a bad day and I took it out on him. It was stupid, but you've destroyed my whole life over one mistake." Kevin's smile disappeared. "One mistake? Jake, I know everything about you. I know about the 15-year-old boy you beat up for his lunch money. I know about the old woman whose purse you stole. I know about every business owner you threatened and every person you hurt. Buddy was not your first victim. He was just the one that made me notice you." Jake felt his face get hot. "You had no right to investigate me. You had no right to hurt innocent people. But you did it anyway, because you thought no one would stop you." The waitress came over to their table. "Can I get you gentlemen anything?" Kevin ordered coffee. Jake said he did not want anything. His stomach felt too sick to eat or drink. After the waitress left, Kevin leaned forward. "Do you want to know who I really am, Jake?" Jake nodded. Kevin took out his phone and showed Jake a picture. It was a movie poster. Kevin's face was on the poster, but he looked different, younger and more glamorous. The movie title was written in big letters across the top. Jake stared at the poster. Slowly, recognition dawned on his face. "You're that actor, the one who's in all those action movies." "That's right." Jake's mind raced. He knew who Kevin Matthews was now. Everyone knew who Kevin Matthews was. He was one of the most famous actors in the world. He was also known for being incredibly nice to everyone he met. Fans, reporters, people who worked on his movies. There were hundreds of stories about his kindness. "But you're supposed to be a good guy," Jake said weakly. "I am a good guy. That's why I'm going to give you a choice." Kevin reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick folder. He placed it on the table between them. "This folder contains evidence of every crime you've committed in the past 5 years. Assault, theft, extortion, drug dealing, witness intimidation. If I give this to the police, you will spend the next 20 years in prison." Jake stared at the folder. "How did you get all this?" "I have resources, Jake. I have money to hire the best investigators. I have friends in law enforcement who owe me favors. I have connections you never dreamed of. When someone hurts something I care about, I can make their life very difficult." "What do you want from me?" Kevin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "I want you to become a better person." Jake laughed, but it sounded nervous and fake. "You can't make someone become a better person." "No, I can't. But I can give you the motivation to try." Kevin opened the folder and showed Jake some of the papers inside. Police reports, witness statements, photographs, bank records, everything was organized and detailed. "Here's your choice, Jake. Option 1. I give all of this to the police tomorrow morning. You get arrested, you go to trial, and you spend the next 20 years in a concrete cell thinking about what you did wrong." Jake felt like he was going to throw up. "What's option 2? "Option 2. You work for me." "Doing what?" Kevin closed the folder. "You spend the next 5 years helping the people you used to hurt. Animal shelters, homeless shelters, community centers, places where you can learn what it means to take care of others instead of hurting them. That's it? Just volunteer work?" Not just volunteer work, real work, hard work. You'll be watched every day to make sure you're really trying. If you skip a day or give up or go back to your old ways, all of this evidence goes straight to the police. Jake thought about it. 5 years of helping people versus 20 years in prison. It should have been an easy choice, but something about it bothered him. Why would you do this? Most people would just want revenge. Kevin looked out the diner window. Across the street was a small park where children were playing on swings. Because I believe people can change, Jake. Not everyone believes that, but I do. I think there's something good inside you that got buried under all the anger and cruelty. I want to give you a chance to find it. What if I can't change? What if I'm just a bad person? Then you'll go to prison, eventually, but at least you'll have tried. Jake stared at the folder on the table. His entire future was sitting right there. 20 years of hell or 5 years of... What? He had never helped anyone in his life. He did not even know where to start. I don't know how to be good, Jake said quietly. Nobody knows how to be good when they start, Kevin replied. It's something you learn by doing it. The diner was quiet, except for the soft sound of music playing from a radio behind the counter. Jake looked around at the normal, peaceful scene. Just a few weeks ago, he would have enjoyed making the people here uncomfortable. Now he felt like he was the one who did not belong. If I say yes, when do I start? Tomorrow morning. There's an animal shelter on Grant Street that needs help cleaning kennels and feeding dogs. You'll work there 8 hours a day, 5 days, a week. The manager knows you're coming. Jake winced. Working with animals after what he had done to Buddy seemed like cruel punishment. But maybe that was the point. What about money? How am I supposed to live? The shelter will pay you minimum wage. It's not much, but it's enough to rent a small apartment and buy food. You'll learn to live simply. Kevin stood up and put the folder back in his jacket. I need your answer now, Jake. Prison or a chance to change? What's it going to be? Jake looked up at Kevin. The famous actor's face was patient but firm. There was no doubt that he would follow through on his threat. But there was also no doubt that he genuinely wanted to help Jake become better. I'll do it, Jake said. I'll try to change. Kevin nodded. Good. Don't make me regret this choice, Jake. A lot of people think I'm crazy for giving you this opportunity. Prove them wrong. As Kevin walked toward the door, Jake called after him. Why? Why give me a chance, when you could just destroy me? Kevin turned back. Because that's what good people do. They try to create more good people. After Kevin left, Jake sat alone in the booth for a long time. The waitress refilled his coffee cup twice, but he barely noticed. He was thinking about the choice he had just made and wondering if he would be strong enough to keep his promise. For the first time in years, Jake Morrison was going to try to be good. Jake Morrison stood outside the Happy Paws animal shelter at 7 in the morning. He had been standing there for 10 minutes, trying to work up the courage to go inside. The building was small and painted bright yellow. A sign by the door showed pictures of happy dogs and cats with the words, "Every animal deserves love." Jake felt sick to his stomach. He had never taken care of anything in his life. He had only hurt things. Now he was supposed to spend 8 hours a day helping animals. Animals like the dog he had kicked just 3 weeks ago. A woman opened the front door and looked at Jake. She was in her 40s with gray hair and kind eyes. You must be Jake. I'm Linda Harris, the shelter manager. Kevin told me you'd be starting today. Jake nodded but could not speak. His throat felt too tight. Linda smiled. Don't look so scared. The animals can sense fear, you know. Come on, let me show you around. The inside of the shelter was cleaner than Jake had expected. There were rows of cages on both sides of a long hallway. Most of the cages held dogs of different sizes and ages. Some were sleeping. Others were watching Jake with curious eyes. We have 37 dogs and 23 cats right now, Linda explained. Some are here because their owners couldn't take care of them anymore. Others were found on the streets. A few were hurt and needed medical care. They stopped in front of a cage that held a small brown dog. The dog had only 3 legs. When It saw Linda, it wagged its tail and tried to jump up. "This is Cooper," Linda said. "Someone hit him with a car and drove away. He lost his leg, but he's still the happiest dog you'll ever meet." Jake stared at Cooper. The dog looked so small and helpless. Jake remembered how good it had felt to kick Buddy. Now, looking at this injured dog, he felt ashamed. "Your job is simple," Linda continued. "Clean the cages, fill the water bowls, feed the animals, take the dogs outside for walks. Can you handle that?" Jake nodded again. Linda handed him a mop and bucket. "Start with the cat room. The dogs can wait until you're more comfortable around them." The cat room was smaller and quieter. There were 15 cats in various cages. Some were kittens so young their eyes were barely open. Others were old cats who moved slowly and slept most of the day. Jake began mopping the floor. It was harder work than he had expected. The mop was heavy when it was wet, and his arms got tired quickly. He had never done this kind of physical labor before. A black cat in one of the cages started meowing at him. Jake looked over and saw that the cat's water bowl was empty. "What do you want?" Jake asked. The cat meowed again and pointed its nose toward the empty bowl. Jake found the water container and filled the bowl. The cat immediately started drinking. When it was finished, it looked up at Jake and purred. It was a small thing, but Jake felt something strange. The cat was happy because of something he had done. He had helped instead of hurt. It felt different than he had expected. After 2 hours of cleaning, Linda came to check on him. "How are you doing?" "It's harder than I thought," Jake admitted. "Most good things are. You ready to try feeding the dogs?" Jake's stomach twisted again, but he nodded. The dog feeding was more complicated. Each dog had different food and different amounts. Some dogs gulped their food down in seconds. Others ate slowly and carefully. Jake had to make sure each dog got exactly what it needed. When he got to Cooper's cage, the 3-legged dog started jumping up and down with excitement. Jake opened the cage door and set down the food bowl. Cooper wagged his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. "He likes you," Linda said from behind Jake. "How can you tell?" "Look at his tail. Look at his eyes. He's happy to see you." Jake watched Cooper eat. The dog looked up at him every few bites, as if making sure Jake was still there. "Can I pet him?" Jake asked. "Of course. Just move slowly." Jake reached out his hand. Cooper sniffed it for a moment, then licked Jake's fingers. His tongue was warm and wet. Jake had never felt anything like it. This animal trusted him. Even though Jake was a stranger, even though Jake had hurt another dog, just weeks ago, Cooper was willing to be friendly. The days turned into weeks. Jake's work at the shelter became routine, but it never became easy. Some days were harder than others. When a sick animal died despite everyone's efforts, Jake felt sad in ways he had never experienced before. When a healthy animal found a new home, Jake felt happy in ways that surprised him. Linda began giving Jake more responsibilities. He learned to give medicine to sick animals. He learned to comfort scared animals who had been abandoned or abused. He learned to train dogs to walk, on leashes and sit on command. 1 month into his work, a new dog arrived at the shelter. It was a golden retriever, just like Buddy. When Jake saw the dog, all his shame came flooding back. He remembered the sound Buddy had made when Jake kicked him. He remembered the look in Kevin's eyes. The new dog was scared and would not let anyone touch him. Linda explained that he had been beaten by his previous owner and did not trust people anymore. "This is going to be a challenge," Linda said. "He needs someone patient, someone who understands what it's like to be afraid." Jake spent hours sitting outside the dog's cage, not trying to touch him or force him to interact. He just sat there, talking quietly and letting the dog get used to his presence. After a week, the dog finally let Jake put food in his cage without growling. After 2 weeks, the dog let Jake touch his head through the cage bars. After 3 weeks, Jake was able to open the cage door and sit inside with the dog. "I've never seen anything like it," Linda told Kevin when he came to visit. "Jake has a gift with the frightened animals. It's like he understands how they feel." Kevin watched through the window as Jake sat in the cage with the golden retriever. The dog was lying with his head on Jake's lap, completely relaxed. How is he doing overall? Kevin asked. Better than I expected. He's not just going through the motions. He really cares about these animals. I think he's starting to understand what love looks like. Kevin nodded. And how is he with people? That's still a work in progress. He's polite to me and the volunteers, but he keeps to himself mostly. He's still learning how to be around people without trying to intimidate them. At the end of Jake's second month, Linda called him into her office. Jake, I have something to tell you. We found a family who wants to adopt Cooper. Jake felt his heart sink. Cooper had become his favorite, the little three-legged dog always. Got excited when Jake arrived in the morning. He always wanted to sit next to Jake during lunch breaks. That's good, Jake said, trying to sound happy. He deserves a real home. You're going to miss him, aren't you? Jake nodded. He was surprised to realize that he might actually cry. That feeling you're having right now, Linda said gently. That's what love feels like. When you care about someone, it hurts to see them go, even when you know it's best for them. The day Cooper left with his new family, Jake watched from the window as they loaded the happy dog into their car. Cooper looked back at the shelter one last time, and Jake thought the dog was looking for him. That night, Jake went back to his small apartment and thought about everything that had changed in 2 months. He was still the same person, but somehow, he was also completely different. He cared about things now. He worried about the animals at the shelter when he was not there. He felt proud when a scared animal learned to trust him. Jake realized that Kevin had been right. People could change. Even someone like him could learn to be good. It was hard work, much harder than being cruel had ever been. But it felt better, too. He still had 3 more years of this work ahead of him. 3 more years of learning how to care instead of hurt. For the first time since this whole thing started, Jake was not counting down the days until it was over. He was actually looking forward to tomorrow. 2 years had passed since Jake Morrison started working at the Happy Paws animal shelter. He looked different now. His face was softer. His eyes were kinder. He moved with patience instead of anger. The other volunteers at the shelter had stopped being afraid of him. Some even considered him a friend. Jake was in the dog yard playing fetch with a young German shepherd named Max when Linda Harris came outside with a strange expression on her face. Jake, there are some people here who want to meet you. Adoptive families? Not exactly. Jake followed Linda back into the shelter. In the front office were 3 people he had never seen before. 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing simple gray clothes. They looked normal, but something about them seemed different. Their eyes were too bright. Their movements were too careful. They stood too still. Jake Morrison, the woman said. Her voice sounded almost normal, but there was something odd about the way she pronounced each word. We would like to speak with you. About what? The first man stepped forward. About your transformation. Jake looked at Linda, confused. She shrugged. They said they were researchers studying community programs. I thought maybe Kevin sent them. We are researchers, the woman said. But not the kind you would expect. The IRA second man reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a phone, but it glowed with blue light. He touched the surface, and suddenly the room filled with a soft humming sound. What is that? Jake asked. Privacy field, the woman explained, so we can speak freely. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Who are you people? The woman smiled, but it did not look quite right. Like she had learned how to smile by watching others do it. We are observers. We have been studying your species for several months. My species? Humans, the first man said. We came to Earth to understand how your kind deals with antisocial behavior. Most intelligent species we have encountered use elimination or permanent exile for individuals who harm others without cause. Jake's legs felt weak. He sat down in a nearby chair. You're saying you're aliens. That is correct, the woman said. We are from a star system you call Proxima Centauri. We have been watching Earth since your species developed space technology. Linda had gone very pale. This is a joke, right? Someone put you up to this. The second man touched his device again. The walls of the office became transparent. Through them, Jake could see what looked like a metal ship floating silently above the shelter. It was shaped like a triangle and made no sound at all. "Oh my God," Linda whispered. The woman turned her attention back to Jake. "We chose to study you specifically because your case is unusual. Most humans who display your pattern of behavior continue that pattern throughout their lives, but you have changed completely. This is fascinating to us." "I had help," Jake said quietly. "Someone gave me a chance to be better." "Yes. Kevin Matthews. We have been observing him as well. His approach to justice is unique among intelligent species." The first man pulled out what looked like a tablet and began reading from it. "Standard procedure among galactic civilizations. Individual commits antisocial acts. Individual is either eliminated or exiled to prevent further harm. Problem solved." "Human procedure," the second man continued. "Individual commits antisocial acts. Other individual creates conditions for behavioral modification. Antisocial individual gradually becomes prosocial individual. Former problem becomes solution." The woman nodded. "This is extremely inefficient. Kevin Matthews spent considerable time and resources changing you instead of simply removing you. By our calculations, elimination would have been 347% more efficient." "But I'm alive," Jake said. "And I'm helping animals now instead of hurting them. Doesn't that count for something?" "That is precisely what we are trying to understand. From a practical standpoint, your transformation makes little sense. From an ethical standpoint, it is remarkable." Linda found her voice. "Are you going to hurt us? Take us away for experiments?" The woman looked genuinely surprised. "Why would we do that? We are researchers, not conquerors. We study interesting phenomena. We do not interfere." The first man consulted his tablet again. "Jake Morrison, in the past 24 months you have helped find homes for 127 animals. You have prevented the euthanization of 23 animals that were scheduled for elimination due to behavioral problems. You have trained 67 volunteers in animal care techniques. You also helped shut down an illegal dog-fighting ring." The second man added, "Using information you provided to law enforcement, 19 criminals were arrested and 34 animals were rescued." Jake was surprised. "How do you know about that?" "We observe everything. Your transformation from predator to protector has created measurable positive change in your community." The woman stepped closer to Jake. "Tell us, do you ever feel the urge to return to your previous behavior patterns?" Jake thought about it honestly. "Sometimes. When I'm really angry or frustrated, I remember how it felt to have power over weaker things. But then I think about Cooper or Max, or the scared animals who learned to trust me. I think about how good it feels when they're happy. That feeling is better than the power ever was." "Remarkable," the first man said, making notes on his tablet. "The positive reinforcement from prosocial behavior has completely overridden the negative behavioral patterns." "Not completely," Jake said. "I still have to choose to be good every day. It's not automatic, but it gets easier with practice." The woman exchanged looks with her companions. "This confirms our hypothesis. Humans possess an unusual capacity for behavioral modification in mature individuals. Most species lose this flexibility after adolescence." "What are you going to do with this information?" Linda asked. "Report it to the Galactic Council," the second man explained. "Other species struggle with antisocial individuals. The human method could be adapted for use in other civilizations." "You're going to teach aliens how to rehabilitate criminals?" Jake asked. "If they are willing to learn. Many species prefer elimination because it is simpler. But your method produces better long-term results." The first man put away his tablet. "We have one final question, Jake Morrison. If you could choose to go back to your previous life, would you?" Jake looked around the shelter office. Through the window, he could see Max waiting in the yard for their game to continue. On the desk was a photo of all the animals that had found homes this month. In the corner was a certificate thanking the shelter for its community service work. "No," Jake said without hesitation. "I like who I am now better than who I was before." The woman smiled, and this time it looked genuine. "That may be the most human answer possible." The aliens began walking toward the door. The second man touched his device and the humming stopped. The walls became solid again. "Wait," Jake called, after them. "What happens now?" The woman turned back. "Now you continue becoming the person you choose to be. That is what humans do best." After they left, Jake and Linda sat in silence for several minutes. "Do you think that really happened?" Linda asked. Jake looked out the window. The strange ship was gone, but Max was still waiting for him in the yard. "I think it doesn't matter," Jake said. "Whether aliens are watching or not, I still have animals to take care of." He walked outside to continue his game with Max. As he threw the tennis ball, Jake thought about how strange his life had become. 2 years ago, he had been a cruel man who hurt things for fun. Now he was being studied by aliens as an example of human goodness. Kevin Matthews had been right. People could change. Even someone like Jake could learn to be good. And maybe, just maybe, that was something worth studying. Max brought the ball back and dropped it at Jake's feet. The dog looked up at him with complete trust and love. Jake threw the ball again and smiled. This was better than any power he had ever felt before. This was what it meant to be human.